today I want to talk about 5 of the UFC fighters that I would call the fighters of the year in 2024. These are going to be fighters that I will rate on the basis of the quality and the quantity of their wins in this year. With, a fighter with 2 wins can make this list, and a fighter with 4 wins can make this list. But if the 2 wins are fantastic enough, I'm not even sure if I'm going to rank them with placing, but they'll still get a mention here if they had great wins, even if there weren't as many of them as another guy that I would talk about. This is the year of the welterweights, though, so I'm going to be talking about a couple of welterweight fighters. Carlos Prates, I'll say, is someone that I owe a thank you to for bringing us 4 very good knockouts this year. Each one was better than the last, and his most recent performance against Neil Magny is a knockout that I always knew that this division could produce in the days of Leon Edwards being champion. Leon Edwards was never the type of guy to just walk down his opponent and get a knockout. Carlos Prates is a fighter that I know has the capability to do this and will go forth and attempt to make the fight a sleepy one for his opponent, man. And I think that it's great that you can consistently count on him to do this in his fights. He said he even had a broken foot in the Neil Magny fight, and he knocked that guy out stiff. So he's a true welterweight, and he does a good job of putting a stamp on his fights. He always knocks his opponent out brutally, and I definitely think that he's a fighter that had one of the best years in 2024. Another welterweight that I'm going to talk about, he just fought, Joaquin Buckley. So he's basically in the same chair as Carlos Prates, but I think that he's even more well-rounded as a grappler and has more power. He's been getting really important fights, though, and winning them by knockout lately. If he doesn't win via knockout, then he's absolutely dominant. And I like Buckley. He's a beast at 170. He got Luque. Carlos Prates, his best win are like the Leech and then Neil Magny. Buckley's been getting big fights and winning them impressively. He beat up Vicente Luque, and this was before he recovered from that brain bleed. Vicente Luque is doing a lot better these days, but Joaquin Buckley still beat the crap out of Vicente Luque. Then he got match made against Nursultan Rozaboev. Nursultan Rozaboev got dominated by Joaquin Buckley with grappling, and he's a Russian, or like a fighter who's from that area of the world, so that was really impressive. After that, he fights Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, the tricky, crafty striker that nobody can ever figure out. Buckley knocks him out in the 4th round. Then he fights Covington and beats him so badly that his eyelid is about to fall off, dude. I wasn't sold on the idea that he could get to the belt before he punched Colby Covington's eyelid almost clean off of his face, dude. Now I buy it. I think he could be a belt holder, and he's definitely the best welterweight prospect right now. And I'll never pick against him with the way that things are looking lately. So that's going to take us on to the next guy that I want to mention. It's going to be our champion at 185 pounds. It'll be Dricus Du Plessis. He did a good job this year, honestly. He beat Strickland and then he beat Adesanya. That Strickland fight was kind of up in the air, but I think that we can be more at ease about the outcome of that first fight because of the fact that he had a better win over Izzy than Strickland did. And Izzy looked better in his fight with DDP than he did against Strickland. So I think that's making a lot of us, like myself, probably think that Strickland loses the fight to DDP in the rematch and gets finished by Dricus. So he's a fighter who I think will hold the belt for some time, Dricus Du Plessis. And I wasn't really convinced that he'd be champion for such a long time until I saw the work that he did this year. His fight style is developing very nicely. His blitzes are becoming more tidy and defensively sound. He has great power. His cardio is amazing, and his wrestling and jiu-jitsu is also like top of the line. So I have a lot of faith in him. He did a great work this year. Strickland is one of the greatest modern welterweights that we have in the promotion. Even though I like to make fun of him like he's a journeyman, he's actually really good at fighting. I'm not sure how he does against Khamzat Chimaev, but in this rematch against Strickland, I think that he gets it done. And that fight against Izzy and the win that he got over Izzy, that's the best win anyone has over Adesanya. So that counts a lot for me because, whenever I first got into the sport, Adesanya was the greatest modern middleweight of all time. He was not better than Anderson Silva as far as all-time rankings went, but I feel like prime for prime, that was a debate that people were having, was could Izzy beat Anderson Silva in his prime? And I always believed yes. So the fact that there is a style like Dricus Du Plessis that can just dismantle Adesanya completely and choke him out on the ground, that was really impressive for me to watch. And that didn't really take that long. So I tip my hat. The next two that we're going to talk about is going to be Ilia Topuria. And okay, this guy has two of the highest quality wins ever in 2 consecutive fights in the span of the same year. So Volk was still undefeated at featherweight at the time that he fought Ilia, even though he'd been KO'd by Islam pretty bad recently before then. So this was still a legit win because of Volk's long undefeated run at featherweight and that he is the 145-pound GOAT. But, I mean, he had an out because that Islam KO mattered, and Volk was softened up from having been slept like that in Abu Dhabi. So I mean, after this fight where Volkanovski does go to sleep, it was a beautiful combination that set the whole thing off too. All Ilia really did whenever people wanted to hate on him was just call for hard fights to defend the belt that he just got, which was really respectable. Max Holloway was just on the heels of probably what was the greatest knockout ever over Gaethje at UFC 300. It was at least the best knockout I've ever seen in my life, but him fighting Ilia made lots of sense whenever they did fight, and Max had no real excuses going into the fight, and he had a lot of momentum too, so a lot of people thought that he was about to expose Ilia. And I think that people really do undersell the value of that moment where Ilia Topuria does knock out Max Holloway, because we repress the failures of the fighters that we all like on a community level. Max Holloway getting knocked out was like, that was huge. After so many years of watching Holloway beat up contenders in featherweight who were worse than he was, that was a huge thing to have happened. So Ilia's progressing the division because all of the active contenders at the top of the divisions and the old champion got it stuck. So he's like unsticking it and making it move forward, and I'm very grateful for the fact that he's there to do that. Next for him should be Diego Lopez, and I refuse to pick against Ilia in this fight because of all the times I wanted to doubt him, but just chose to trust his ability, and he delivered. I can go on and on about his boxing too. He's the GOAT. I want to see him establish himself as the greatest featherweight of all time, and I wouldn't be upset if he eventually held 2 belts eventually. He deserves a lot of praise for how he's shown up over this year, I think, and how high he's still setting his sights for 2025. He wants to go to lightweight and beat up Charles Oliveira and force the UFC to give him a title shot, since he'd be a champion and also ranked top 5 in the new division. It would be like a title eliminator. And I think he could really do whatever he wants, even though he's not someone who the organization can count on to step up for like these short notice bouts. I'm not sure if the opportunity did come up for him to take a fight with Charles Oliveira on a few weeks notice in like March from February. I'm not sure if he'd do that because he's not the type of guy who saves pay-per-views, but his fights matter a lot and they have weighty outcomes. So he's a great performer, and he would need to face Dagestan level grappling, I think, in order to be effectively contained. So I'd like to see him fight Islam in 2025, however things go. But he's definitely one of the fighters of the year. And then the guy who actually did win Fighter of the Year, we're going to talk about Alex Pereira. And this is our sports Michael Jordan if you're a Zoomer. We still have John Jones for everybody else, you know, the guys who like were watching before me, but he has no super crazy impressive modern wins. Even though we do have footage of the 2 UFC fights that he does have at heavyweight, that's like in the books. Pereira has great wins over top contenders in his weight class though, and he's turning them into ground beef patties, or just executing them with single punches or kicks or knees or whatever. He's one of the greatest representations of fighting in this sport from the kickboxing perspective, and he saved so many events that have fallen through. I guess fighters like Yuri Prochazka also deserve praise, but Alex still showed up for a number of events too that he was scheduled for on top of this, and put on some of the best performances of the year and of the night every time. So I'm not really saying much, but Alex Pereira is a great fighter, and he's a spectacle, and he draws new fans into the sport due to how crazy it looks whenever he does his thing. Ilia Topuria is a great striker, but not everyone can appreciate the minute details of Topuria's game that make him great, like the foot positioning and the angles and stuff.
Alex just has so much aura whenever he fights, and his positioning and stance just makes you want to root for him because he just has so much swag, man. And I'm grateful for the fact that he wins and that I'm able to be into the sport right now, like how much I care about it. In case he becomes an all-time great, I don't want to just hear stories about it. I'm like super grateful for the fact that I get to watch it happen in real time. So he's on track to doing exactly this. That's gonna be my list, you guys. Thank you for sticking around up until this point. Please subscribe to the channel and share the video, I guess. I don't really know. Like the video, comment. If you want to see a specific topic covered, please comment and I will talk about it. I will catch you fellas in the next one. Otherwise, you have a beautiful day. I will see you guys.